How's it going, YouTube? Cool, today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be a Allen meta rant. Now, I've heard a ton of misconceptions about next format and things that I just don't necessarily agree with, and I'm going to be talking about why and my own perspectives going into the event. So definitely let me know down below in the comment section what you've thought and how your testing has been, because I'm genuinely curious when it comes to doing well at the YCS. Of course, we all want to make sure that we have as much knowledge as possible, but I'm just going to be sharing my bit of knowledge from my testing so far, because I've been like deep in testing, right? And I feel like some of the things that I'm hearing so far are not great, but we'll kind of talk about that as we go forward. So definitely go ahead and check out my sponsors over on RW, Cloud, Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, or Grimoire down below in the description. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and then pick up my brand new playmat over on Imperium Duelist. Now, I just want to jump right into the video and just say Super Poly is just a mad cope. What room do you have for Super Poly when the side deck and the extra deck should just be super tight, with realistically most of the better decks in the format right now that you're playing are just not going to have the room for extra targets. And if you're just playing Super Poly to specifically hit Malice, then it's a dead card against literally every other matchup, and it's not great. Now, the thing that people are saying is that you activate Super Poly and you get rid of Echo Talker and a Firewall, which is great. That's not everyone's on board, but like some, sure. You're hitting Echoed and you're hitting Firewall. That implies your opponent's going completely off, and you didn't have cards like Fua or Perulia or even Walls if you're playing those cards if you're in a later game state, because a lot of people are deciding Super Poly, they're not maining it. So that means that you already have cards in your deck like Fua, Perulia, and Walls. So like, yeah, you want something to draw into that's going to be impactful, but if you're already playing a decent hand trap lineup, then like this shouldn't really be something that you need. And if it's only what you draw, then you're super polying away the Firewall and the Echoed. Your opponent still has access to Binder Effect, to Banish. They have access to get to like MTP. They have like 4 or 5 cards in hand from everything they drew, right? Like, Super Poly isn't really gonna solve the issue. Summoning Golem isn't going to solve the issue. And I feel like a lot of people are already losing to Malice now before we even have any of these crazier end board pieces, and I just don't see how Super Poly answers that. And I love this card. I use it all the time. I used it in my regional tops. I think the card's insane. But right now, it's not exactly cracking the board, right? Even if you go against Mitsurugi and you're like, all right, cool, Super Poly the board, and they go Prayer Swim back Kameno, like, what did you solve, right? And, you know, I could be wrong. I could be absolutely wrong, but I don't think that Super Poly is the answer. Playing 9 Charmies is definitely a good way to make your opponent stop playing the game, right? That's great. But Super Poly and leaving yourself on 4 cards going second, not my favorite. Your best 3 decks going into the room is definitely just going to be like Adagnister Malice, the Mitsurugi Fiendsmith deck. I don't even think that like the Ryziel variant is like that crazy. I think that the Fiendsmith Mitsu deck is very strong. But of course, you're going to see some of these builds with the Ryziel cards too. This just kind of encompasses all of the Mitsurugi builds. And then you're going to have the Memento deck, which is still going to be around. People are still going to play it. The deck is still very complex, and if you can play the deck, you'll do very well. Belle is just like Ghost Ogre in the sense that I only would ever play 2 of this card, but this should be in your deck list somewhere at 2, whether it's in the main or the side. Talking about super polying an entire end board with something like Echoed, you could also just like Belle Echoed, or you could Ogre Echoed, because it has to summon to the arrow it points to, so that means it won't summon at all. And they won't really have a stop on board to do anything about you belling an Echoed. So you could just let them full combo and then just go Belle and Echoed, and your opponent's just like, welp, right? Like, it's just not good at that point. So that's one thing where Belle should be in your deck list. It is very strong, especially if you lose to having your cards banished with Malice being so popular. Let's say you're playing something like Memento, you should probably be on Belle just so that's not going to be an issue. It is also a very good card into the top 3 decks right now. It's really good into Mitsurugi, it's really good into Malice, and it's also very good into Memento. You just go ahead and Belle Gaddock, of course, and you're off to a very good start. Now let's hop into the devil's advocate arguments. Now, the first argument is everyone being like, it's a Droll format, you have to play Droll. Droll is the only card that's going to save you. I disagree. I think that it is a Droll format, absolutely, and you can main Droll, you can side Droll. That's perfectly fine. But I don't think, however, if you're playing Malice, that you're mandatory having to play Droll. You can play Dominus Impulse where most decks cannot. And Dominus Impulse next format is broken. The only other deck that you're realistically worried about in the room is Mitsurugi. And Impulse against Mitsurugi is crazy. Like, this card is literally absurd. So that's one thing that I think that, yeah, you can play Droll, but my problem is if you play Malice, you know this, that if your opponent establishes any kind of board, Malice still has the issue of going second outside of drawing other breakers, because Malice can go second, but sometimes it can be hard if there's like a Regeki or a Detonator that's going to be just like popping your whole board. But if you Droll, they're still setting up like a Mano, they're still setting up like a Detonator, right? Like there's still going to be a board there. Whereas like if you Charmy your opponent, they're just not going to play. Or if you Impulse your opponent, they're just not able to play, right? Whereas, like, if you Droll them, yeah, they'll stop. But, like, if they go a Mano Set Prayer, you're still getting a card out of your hand. You're still going to be getting your board Regeki'd, right? Like, they still have other hand traps. Like, there's a lot of other issues going on here. And that's something where I want to make sure that we're all aware of, because, yes, playing Droll is very strong, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't play Droll because the card's very strong. But at the same time, if you're playing Malice and you have other cards you want to run, no, I do not think that Droll is necessarily mandatory. You have other cards that are the same level of power when it comes to something like Droll. The next argument is going to be Fua and Perulia are the best Mulcharmies, and this one I agree with. I think this is absolutely true. What I don't agree with is running the walls. I think that running 9 Charmies is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to side into 6 more and then have 9 Charmies in your deck, absolutely go for it. That's fine. But at the same time, I think that Walls is going to be a lot less effective, because if you're already playing against something like Malice, you're already siding in Lancia, right? And then you have Fua in your main, and then you're going to be siding in Perulias. So you're already on 9 cards that are going to be stopping that deck. And you're like, okay, but what if I don't draw one of those 9 cards? That happens. Okay, what happens when you draw all those cards and you like Fua or Perulia them, and then you go for the second one, and then they just pass, and you're staring at more cards in your hand that are just not engine, right? That's the other big issue. So that's something where you don't want to overside. You want to make sure that you're doing fine, right? But if you're playing against things like Malice, and I know that Mawals is good against like other things as well, but Fua and Perulia cover most of those things. And I feel like you're fine if you don't have Mawals. There's other cards that you should be running right now, whether you're maining or siding Ulti Slayer or Metalronis. You're on one of them at 3. Whether you're maining or siding Fua or Perulia, you're on both of them at 3, right? So there's going to be concessions that you have to make, and I feel like Mawals is always going to be the concession that I'm okay without. Now, this format in particular, I do believe that Ulti Slayer is going to be the way over Metalronis. I do not like Metalronis, and I don't think that it's worthwhile. I think that extra decks are now even more tight than ever, and if you're playing against a lot of Malice Mirror matches, that's great. A lot of your cards are one-ofs, and you're not necessarily going to want to banish them face down just to get rid of your opponent's cards, especially things like Binder, which can be a really big issue. The other thing, too, is that, like, Metalronis, if we're seeing a lot more boards with Caesars because everyone's playing Fiendsmith cards, I don't necessarily want to have Metalronis, especially if I'm playing on something like Unchained, which is a very real deck next format, by the way. Especially if you're playing on something like Mitsurugi, and they're like, I'm going to Regeki your board. And they're like, please, right? Like, I would like that. So I don't really think that Metalronis is always going to be the answer. I think last format was really strong. This format, I think the Ulti Slayer is a lot better. Being able to out a Caesar and then be able to dump a Mirror Logic, negate something else, where a lot of the boards are getting a little bigger. Yes, we're seeing a lot more of the layered boards still, but we are seeing a lot more break my board type decks at the moment, especially with Malice. So that's one thing where going into this event, it might even be better to play a more mid-rangey Malice deck, just because if you're playing the break my board, people are opting to break that board if they are on cards like Super Poly or the Ulti Slayer Metalronis, and trying to just go ahead and deal with things like Echoed immediately. So that might be better for you to even just start going like Cryptor Pass with a bunch of hand traps and whatnot, you know? So that's something else just to consider. Now for the last argument, I do not like this one whatsoever, and I will scream from the top of my lungs at the hillside about why I think that this is just objectively wrong. So, 3 March Hare in your deck list. 2 March Hare is combo. I do agree. You can just go ahead and go Hare, banish Hare, summon Hare, bring back Hare, normal summon Hare, and combo from there, right? That's cool, but Hare by itself doesn't really do anything, right? So if it's like your only Malice name, you can't even like normal Bestial it and then like have something else go crazy with that as a combo, right? Like it doesn't. So for me, I'd rather run just 2 Hare and have a lot of other options in non-engine, because I feel like this format, more than anything, is going to be really determined off non-engine. I'm playing 16 hand traps myself right now, amongst other non-engine, right? So I really want to make sure that my hands are going to be as consistent as possible. I do, however, think that if you want to play a card like Enemy Controller in Malice, it could be a lot better if you're playing 3 Hare, because you always have an option to go ahead and banish your card from grave, bring it back after you attempt to steal your opponent's monster, and force out other interruption. So that could be a very interesting build. The other thing is that if you are going to be on 3 Allure and you're playing 3 Hare, it's really good because you get to add back the Hare, and then you still have your advantage gained back from where you started. So that's also very cool. I don't like Allure right now because if everyone agrees that it's a Droll format and most people are maining Droll, why are we trying to lose to Droll in a deck that shouldn't lose to Droll, right? And you're already playing cards like AI Meet You, you're playing Backup, you're playing Wicked, you're playing all these cards to be able to search into your other part of your combo. So it is very awkward if you're trying to play into Droll in a format where Droll is very prevalent, whereas you can always just go like normal summon Dormouse and just do standard Malice combo, which is fine, but there are other search cards that you are playing, and a lot of people are starting to play things like Achichi as well, which is crazy, but like you can. I do agree with like 2 Linguribo as well. I think that it's very good. But right now, going like Achichi search backup, even if you get Droll there, I think that it's fine because at least you can special summon the backup out of your hand and then try to go like splash someone back and someone like a Heat Soul, so on the next turn you can at least draw a card, or try to extend it to something like an Echoed, right? So there's a lot of different options that you have in the deck now, which is very strong, but I personally am not a huge fan of Allure or 3 Hare at all. I hope they enjoyed today's video. Definitely go ahead and check out my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.